Hello, everyone, and welcome. I really lucked out with this panel and really with Newchip overall. I've been working much more closely with our mentor network in recent months, and it's really afforded me the opportunity to meet and work with some truly brilliant individuals. Our accelerator program allows entrepreneurs to surround themselves with some amazing Newchip advisors, investors, and really other cohort founders as well. But arguably one of the most valuable components of our program and of the accelerator is the mentor network. And we're continuously growing and evolving this program, and our mentors have accomplished some really incredible things in their personal career, have a special passion for guiding entrepreneurs, helping to stimulate thought around new ways to innovate and find success. With me today, three of our esteemed individuals from that mentor network, and I really couldn't be more excited to spotlight them. Ashley Chu, Dave Izuka, Chris Freeman. They've all worked with founders around the world through the Newchip Accelerator, helping them solve unique problems, introducing them to valuable connections, and really offering distinct perspectives that only they could offer. So, I could give some really smashing introductions for all of them, but where's the fun in that? I'd really love to give them a chance to quickly talk about their backgrounds and some of their achievements, hobbies, and interests. So I'll go ahead and kick that off, and I'll send it over to you, Ashley, if you'd love to give a quick intro and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the introduction, and very happy to be here. So I'm the founder and also managing director of my own independent advisory and consulting firm. I help venture capital and startups to scale and grow their business, and I specialize in global expansion, of course, investment deal sourcing and fundraising, as well as product management on the customer experience side and innovation. And on the other side, I'm also a venture partner for one of the venture capital fund in Singapore, and we are focusing on investing in fintech specific and the adjacent in Southeast Asia, which is right now one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And before that, I was an investor in L Catterton, which is a private equity firm that focus in investing B2C sectors, including consumer brands, e-commerce, and various different B2C area. And before that, I was in Amazon. I led global expansion efforts in Amazon, was one of the founding team member in Amazon Singapore, and did the expansion for Amazon Japan and China as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, you really bring so much to the table, and that's really a great example of how many of our mentors really do have networks and experience around the globe. And that's one of the best parts, I think, about the Newchip program here. So thank you for that, Ashley. I appreciate it. Dave, I'll go ahead and send it over to you. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're incredibly rich history, so I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
So my name is Dave Izuka, and I've got about 30 years of total experience, I guess, split between finance, venture capital, and consulting, and quite a bit of what I call venture acceleration. So as far as my finance background, I've been CFO of a number of companies. The larger ones were Electronics for Imaging, a company called Tops, which was a subsidiary of Sun, a company called General Magic, and way back when I took a company called WordStar public. So other than that, I've done a lot of consulting to venture-backed startups. So did about 4 years of experience in venture capital. I worked for 2 funds, 3 years for a fellow named Fred Adler out of New York, and a year with a good friend of mine named Gil Kogan with a company called Weispeck and Greer, which is eventually morphed into Lightspeed. Other than that, I've done a lot of what's called venture acceleration for maybe about 10 years. So, which is what I'm doing now. And primarily my emphasis in venture acceleration has been in helping startups in fundraising strategy. So raising financing, recruiting, and eventually closing those financing opportunities. So that's what I've been doing for a number of years and continue to do so. So that's pretty much my background. Thanks.
I love it. Yeah, no, thank you for that, Dave. And obviously bring so much history, so much experience to the table. Our founders blessed to get introduced to you and to work with you. Chris, I'll lastly send it over to you. He's in the Chicago area and in the Midwest, and he's working with programs all across the country. So I'll let him kind of tell us a little more about himself.
Yeah, thanks for having me be last, Greg, because I'm really going to pale in comparison to the two before me. In all honesty, thank you very much for the intro and involving me. My background is very much an unmanned fire hose turned on full blast. I was in advertising. I was a writer out east in Philadelphia and came to Chicago. I'm from Chicago. Jumped to the strategy and account side. Worked with some of the biggest brands on earth. Developed some really cool stuff. Got a little bored, so my entrepreneurial craziness took me into film. I was going to be a famous director. That has not happened yet. But we got into a bunch of films, short and feature length, and where we were still doing it on 35 millimeter film and otherwise, and then digital and commercial work. It was great. But I had a pivot opportunity to jump into hospitality to help somebody with their little crappy venue. And that little crappy venue turned into a pretty substantial chain locally here regionally in Chicago called the Four Corners Tavern Group, which has just been shortened to Four Corners Group. I exited that back in 08, 07. And started another company called Element, and we got into all kinds of stuff with that, from hotels and banquet to fine dining to mascalerias to coffee shops to fast casual to quick serve. I think nightclubs, sports bars, cold pressed juice and HPP and wholesale distribution nationally, and also brick and mortar. We had a consultancy called Catapult, which would start or save venues. That was fun and exhausting, so we kind of stopped doing that. So now, hospitality, I kind of pivoted out of about 2 years ago, thankfully with COVID, but it's a great opportunity to help people that are in the food and beverage vertical right now, however I can, which I do through 1871 in Chicago, pretty large incubator, and through their accelerator affiliates, one of which especially Food Foundry, where I'm an EIR with both. A lot of fun, exhausting, great. I really do love mentoring, and that's it got me into Newchip as well, which I'm really fortunate to be a part of. Right now, I'm a general partner, one of three of us, with a new firm, new fund, venture fund called Kiyote. It's everybody mispronounces it, including Greg. It's all good. And we basically invest in seed stage through probably pre-A. We never lead. We're a follow fund. We like products that are created, and then we want to sprinkle some money on that to help them scale and bring our network and our abilities to that front. I also am part of a consultancy called Orchid Black out of St. Petersburg, New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, where we do management consulting to help tech companies and others, companies like Intel and RSA and a bunch of other great clients. And then on the other side is a growth side where we do an analysis, and mutually we decide if it's a good fit. We'll help you get from 2 to 5x or more. We'll help you work out an exit plan. If you have a Series A that's not really working out and you're not selling what you should per your pro forma, we can help with that. But we have to kind of ascertain and identify that we can. I do commercial real estate office tenant rep all over the country with a company called Colliers, and that's fun. I can help people there. And lastly, amidst a bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to mention, in the middle of starting a beer distributorship in Chicago with a couple other guys. So keep them busy, doing the good Lord's work.
You sure are. No, you sure are. And yeah, across all different industries, verticals, you incredible resource for all of our founders and for the Newchip staff as well. No, it's not. I'm not blowing smoke. It's true. It's true. And actually, yeah, we're looking to really add as much value as we can to our mentor program. It's already just so phenomenal. But yeah, Chris has brought some great ideas to the table as well, and immersed in several different programs that have the same goal as Newchip, maybe operate a little bit differently, but nonetheless is bringing some great ideas to our team. And actually, on that note, I'm gonna hit you first this time, Chris, and show you that respect. Love to hear kind of where'd you go? I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with Newchip thus far. I know it's been brief. It's a little bit shorter on the experience side. We just brought you in a couple of months ago, but you've worked with a couple of founders through the Newchip Accelerator. And what do we do a little bit differently? What do you think that we are, from an accelerator standpoint, thriving with, and what are we bringing to the table as a program?
What's fun is how I found you guys was I don't even know. Oh, actually, it was somebody that's part of your program that's wonderful that makes gummy bears.
Oh yeah, Piper.
I think you might know who I'm talking about.
Piper.
So yeah, Piper reached out randomly. I don't know how we got connected or whatever, but LinkedIn, and we just had this wonderful conversation. She was one of the cheeriest and most intelligent, most humble founders I could have ever met. That's involved in organic gummy bears, and I learned more about gummy bears that led to me pulling all the gummy bears out of our cabinets at home for my 4, 3, and 1-year-old. That I'm very thankful for learning it, but it's kind of like, oh, is that what's in there? So it's amazing. I really learned a lot. I was so enchanted by the conversation that I started looking into this weird, incubator, Newchip online. And I looked into it. It sounded awesome. And I had to try and become a part of it just to see what it's all about and expand my ecosystem outside of some of the other markets I had already been in. And now, like you mentioned, we've had a couple conversations recently. Some of the mentees that I've been connected with, and I'm still, finding my footing within Newchip, admittedly, but it's been pretty, I enjoy mentoring across the board. I'm a process guy. I have some vertical experience in food and beverage, real estate, some other things, but if there's a problem, I love finding my way to that problem. And that fits very well with mentoring. And I'm lucky enough to have had the schedule, and I don't sleep much. I drink a lot of coffee that allows me the time to dive into the mentees and really help them. You need money, great. Let's find you money. Let's figure out why aren't you making money? Let's figure out how you can make more. You should meet somebody else who can help you make even more money, or you guys could rev share. And holy gods, you're both going to the same audience with different products. How cool! So, and I've learned a lot as well in terms of that help me with my companies by mentoring, because I learn from people that are doing their own thing and management styles, and shedding hubris, and hopefully, being passionate, legitimately and authentically passionate. So it's been a blast. I appreciate the experience, and I look forward to a lot more of it.
Well, I'm glad Piper found you. Yeah, no doubt. So, well, thank you for that answer. And, obviously happy to explore other ways to continue getting you involved. There's no question. We would love to do that. So Dave, I'll send this over to you. Same question. I know that you are individually kind of operating a venture accelerator of your own, and it just kind of happens naturally when you have the experience that you do. So I would love to hear your take on Newchip and how have we kind of differentiated ourselves.
Okay. Primarily, it's the diversity at Newchip, so I have a different perspective here. So I've been the accelerator for a number of years and a number of startups recently, and I find that pretty much my focus is more process. So this has been a refreshing change. So typically, companies are coming to me and asking for my perspective and for more optimization as opposed to what's the process. So I find it refreshing. It's a different perspective, and I'm enjoying that quite a bit.
There's no shortage of different scenarios, unique scenarios that our founders can bring to our mentors, and what better group to help them solve those problems. Mm-hmm. Ashley, same kind of question down to you. We have a unique program here. I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on it and how we've been operating.
Yeah, sure. For me, it's three things. So the first thing is flexibility, because I can take the meeting anywhere and choose my own time, since I live in between the Valley and also Singapore. And I'm also a very avid world traveler, and I've been to 140 countries so far. So I enjoy the flexibility of working anywhere. And also because I have multiple type of work, such as like my own advisory consulting business, and I have a career coaching program that I run as a mentor for advising people career, and also do venture partners in 1982 Ventures. So I have multiple things going on. So I like the flexibility, which is very important. And Newchip for me, it's great because you have the online model, seems work very well, operating in a very efficient manner, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the traditional accelerator have shut down some of their physical locations. Not only you guys didn't really impacted negatively, but also got largest cohort. I think it's a couple months ago. So I think seems like the model really worked pretty well. And secondly, for me, it's also diversity of the startup, which Dave also talked about earlier on. So not only from the industry standpoint, but also from the geography standpoint. A few years back, I was like launching the Amazon to different international markets, and now my work still focuses much more on helping the company on global expansion. So the venture capital side of things, I also focus a lot more on investing in Southeast Asia only. I like to work with the startup with global vision, even though they are in the US, or the startup that are located internationally. So that's my line of work. And I think Newchip got a lot of this very diversified international batch of startup, which worked very well for me. And the third reason is because your extensive network with corporates and investors. So having the access to this network would be very helpful for me to think about collaboration for the startup that I'm working with, and also my venture capital fund, because I'm doing fundraising as well, which in return, I would be able to invest back into the Newchip startups at the same time. So, but I haven't really tapped into the investor network yet, but I think I should. So these are kind of like my main three reasons that I like to work with you guys.
I love that. Oh, great answers. And I think you would know better than anyone. We're thrilled about the idea, the prospect of building out our presence in other markets, Singapore being one of just a great startup hub in general. And so we'd love to explore ways to keep you engaged and immersed in that region, and also with Newchip, of course. Well, so very cool. And I actually want to touch on that first part of it as well. Yeah, we took a virtual nature with our accelerator really from day one, and nobody could have predicted where 2020 would take us, but it really has enabled us to allow founders the opportunity to keep building their networks, to keep getting resources and coaching. And so, the virtual nature of this program, while it offers you a lot of flexibility and offers our founders a lot of flexibility in their location and where they operate their business, it just seemed like a great choice for us even before the current events that we're dealing with. But thank you so much for that response. Next, I kind of want to dive in a little closer to some of the companies that you've been working with, some of the founders through the Newchip program that you've had a chance to meet, that you've had a chance to grow with and help grow also. And so I will stay with you, Ashley. We'll keep going with the boomerang style here. And is there a company or two that you've got to meet through the Newchip program, maybe some challenges that you've helped them overcome, and some new successes that they've been able to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So I have a couple of talks with a couple of startups, and their common challenges have been in fundraising right now. So our conversation is around fundraising and also global expansion, because that's my line of work. And one of the startups asked me if he should register the company entity in the US for one fundraising purpose, because they are located in Singapore and they're concerned that the US investors don't invest internationally. And this is not untrue, because many US investors have gone pretty much domestic this year. But I share with him the fast growing scene of family offices in Southeast Asia, and also the opportunity that they could get without raising in the US. So he said he got very inspired after our conversation. He saw all these opportunity that he didn't see before. And although fundraising is still a challenge for most of the startup and also for them, it may not be the best environment to fundraise this year right now, but they have been doing quite well, and they raised half of the target figures that they are originally aiming at, but still in the process, of course. But I'm very proud of what they have achieved so far.
I love that. And that's wonderful. Family offices really around the globe, whether they're in a more local region for a company or even here in the United States, they really do open a lot of doors. Sometimes they don't necessarily have the same restrictions or guidelines that they need to follow that a larger VC would have. And so those are great connections to make. That's wonderful to hear. Dave, how about yourself? A couple of the founders that have been in Newchip, how have you been able to help them out through some challenges?
Well, I hope it's ultimately going to be a help. It was
of course
trying and tribulation there for a while, but there's a couple of instances I'd like to chat with you about. So one of the companies just had unrealistic growth plans, right? So typically when I talk to a company, I ask them a bunch of questions, and basically I ask them, are you going after the brass ring? If so, are you willing to do whatever it takes to be the market leader? Yes. How long is it going to take you? And if it's 5 to 7 years, that's the magic number. Then I ask them some dumb question like, and can you achieve 100 million in revenues in that 5 to 7 years? And invariably the answer to all these questions is always yes, right? So at any rate, this one particular founder and I got into a long discussion about this, and invariably, their aspirations were just too high. Although they're saying they're going after the brass ring, when I started asking about where are you with this technology, is your team big enough, blah, 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 blah. In essence, this particular founder had no idea about what it would take. On the one hand, he wanted to aspire to this huge, IPO in X number of years, and he thought he can do it, but he just had no feeling for what it takes to get it done.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of discussion with him about, we have to kind of level set your aspirations with what's possible, right? So because currently he has a very little team, his strategy was less than ideal. So he has a lot of work to do. And invariably what he's done is go back to the drawing board. And I think he's lowered his growth plans, and he's gone after a little bit more accessible financing with smaller VCs. So before he was going to go to the creme de la creme of VCs with this pitch that just wasn't going to work, right? So I think he's headed in the right direction now. So hopefully he'll be able to come to grips with something where he'll get funded in the not too distant future. And I have another company that's I've seen a number of times, and I call it the chicken and egg issue, right? So this one particular mentee had, and numerous other startups have the same affliction, I guess. And they talk about a great idea, scaling a company with compelling technology, a strong team, appropriate funding that enables that growth, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, let's get started. And why don't we look at what your team is? Let's look at, trying to do some use cases for your technology. And as I explored each of those and then fundraising, he said, I can't do that because I can't raise the money because I don't have a strong enough team. And I can't get the team because I'm not funded, and blah, blah, blah. So invariably, the issue here isn't so much, is it a chicken and egg issue? It's basically the wrong CEO. I mean, what he's driving for just doesn't make sense, right? So what he's aspiring for, keeps on blaming, I can't raise the team until I get funded. Until I get funded, I can't get the team. So it's like everything is just this dilemma, right? And unfortunately, I see quite a few of those where the aspirations versus the real world is dramatically different, I guess this is a good way to put it. So.
Well, 30 plus years experience, that's what you're able to do. That's what you're able to recognize. And this is what we love about the mentors, is challenging the assumptions of our entrepreneurs, making sure that, I don't know the individual you're speaking with, but we don't want them to look foolish in front of a large VC. We want them to have achievable goals and stay true to their vision. But I think obviously you were able to offer some incredible advice there. Yeah. And Chris, same question to you. One of the companies, founders that you've been working with, maybe some introductions you were able to make for them, or how have you been able to help them on their path?
Again, I'm still squeaky behind the ears green. Just started working with Mark Halberstein from Simple Night.
Yeah.
Super shrewd dudes, gets it, very aggressive, is in the middle of just about to have a baby. He's got a lot of stuff going on, right? And Fitz, I've probably worked with a couple hundred founders over the, as a mentor, formal mentor over the last couple of years, 3-4 years. And he definitely fits a certain profile, and he's very aggressive, and he's calculated, and, the fundraising and everything else he's on. Conceptually, he's tuned in his mind with where he's going, what has to happen, his ability to articulate it. That's coming into vogue. He's in the middle of raising money and operating at the same time as everybody is. And just at a higher level, I also worked with Tanvir Amir, from Dunya.
Yep.
I'm still getting to know this. This is my brand new mentee, so forgive me.
No, yeah, I just made that introduction a couple of weeks ago. So,
and he's wonderful dude. We're still getting to know each other. I'm still understanding his product. And it, mentoring, just to go ethereal for a second, philosophically. There are some. It's kind of like, and it's a bad analogy, but a great one. In restaurants, if you do certain things well, you can exist. If you do them really well, you can succeed, right? And it's very simple. Like, it used to be much more algorithmic before Yelp and whatnot. But if you do a product, you create it, you distribute it, and you do it well, and you care, and then you promote it the right way, and that's very gray. But you'll do well, you'll succeed. Similarly with mentoring on both sides of the fence, as a mentee or a mentor, I believe there's a similar algorithm. And it's kind of like dropping a penny into that thing when you're a kid, and the penny finds its way to where the pennies go. I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Frogs.
Yeah, ping pong, pennies. And I break the thing open to get to the money, but that was just me. There's certain founders oftentimes, and I was one of these people several times. It took me years to get past this. There's a hubris that you're just, I'm doing this, I'm mission driven. I was told I have to be obstinate and it's my mission and I'm driving in a certain way, and don't let people get in your way. There's that hubris that can really stand in people's way at times when they're in, founding their first company, or maybe it's their second or something, just because, especially if you go to Vegas and you win the first time, that's the worst thing that could ever happen to you, because then you're a winner every time. Sometimes people kill it on their first time, and they don't let their guard down enough to just be confident without the hubris. But then even more so, you go into they could have a wonderful business model, but they have the wrong team, or they hired a general counsel when they should have hired a COO, or, so it's really that curating of the right team at the right time. And you don't need 10 people initially. It's like, who do you need right now, and who could you 1099 and who could you work some sort of agreements with on the way to them working for you when it works out even better than it is. Yeah. Obviously looking at finance and marketing, I tell, a lot of people try and, in the interest of driving revenue so they can, achieve some sort of masterful valuation, or they could just fundraise more, aggressively. They play out a number of different revenue areas, like trying to drive business in several different ways. And a lot of time that distracts them, and you try and be good at everything, you're good at nothing, and as a result, it makes everything a lot harder. So focus is like one of the best F words you could ever use as a founder, myself included. I'm the least focused person in the world, as you can tell by the stuff I'm into right now. But I love it, and I've learned how to manage my ADD-ish. Focus is one thing. So right, that's huge. A lot of times people try and reinvent the wheel as well. It's like, dude, that already exists. What can you add around? What can you wrap around this that's special and creates your moat? If you don't have a moat, you better have a great strategy, and it better involve some sort of penetration or saturation strategy to establish yourself very quickly, because people are going to catch up to you right away. If there's no moat, and I'm running into this a lot at 1871 right now as well. Lastly, I always go down the path of and this is cheesy, everybody says it, but there's validity to it. Like, why this product, why this company, why this idea, why you, and why now? So, and if you can answer those questions, it sets a wonderful initial conversation with most of the mentees. And you can really start going down the path of finance and marketing and sales, and what are you going to do with all this money you get when you get it, and what's your end game? Do you have something in mind in an acquisition? You want to be purchased by IRI or Nielsen or Kroger, Albertsons, or whatever. So there's a great stage, but within that first 3 minutes of a conversation, and this has happened, if I can get a word in, it can really set the stage for a really fertile relationship from a mentoring mentee standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's a stimulating question just by itself. Why you and why now? Like, why is this the time to solve the problem that you're trying to solve? And that can open the door to many other conversations that are very fruitful. And I think actually you had said one of the first points about creative ways to build a team, whether it is using 1099 employees, whether it is, compensating with equity or compensating through other means. I think that might solve maybe an issue for one of Dave's founders as well, who's really struggling to build out the right team to take something to market. So that's a great point as well.
Well, the humility, real quick, just to pepper in, what the humility required to even engage a mentor or an EIR to care about you and to reveal all things about you personally and your company. Like, that really, it requires both parties engaging. And if that doesn't happen, it's completely a waste of time, and everyone's time is really valuable,
Very, very true. Very true. It's very important, regardless of how much success you've had, even if you did, hit a home run on your first venture, or you're on your 8th venture, and now you're really looking, obviously just to get on base. You need to be humble. You need to have humility, be coachable, and listen, be receptive of the advice that others might have, whether you choose to take it or whether you choose to go the other direction. It's very important to have that humility. And that's, I'm really glad that you did bring that up. And I'll actually stay with you here, talking about, mentors in general. This is the whole topic of this conversation, and really how I've gotten to know all three of you. Chris, have you had a mentor of your own in the early days of your career? Have you been able to have that humility and listen to somebody else guide you?
No.
Well,
no, I'm lying. I not by design. Only
Not
reason,
the formal. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the formal structure that we're presenting here. But
I had a mentor who taught me so much, and I didn't realize how much I learned until I was 24, having just left the company that I was with. And it was one of the guys that was the first people who hired me at an agency, small agency in Chicago that no longer exists. They were acquired, and it really taught me channel strategy, and it taught me, sales and channel strategies and penetration strategies, and it taught me how he taught me, made me learn rather, how products get made and how they arrive in somebody's home or embedded in some other product. That was amazing. And only probably, throughout my food and beverage experience, I always sought out that special somebody. I really did, actively, because all the books you read, you're like, find a mentor. Where I'm gonna go find a mentor. I couldn't find one. And literally, there are wonderful people out there, but at the level I was at or saw myself at, and there's hubris there, of course, but the people I was playing alongside, meaning operating alongside other concepts and other operators, and New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bon Appetit, we were, James Beardhouse, all this stuff. We were doing great work. We were competing against all these people who normally I would reach out to, and we would just have a very different conversation as peers instead of mentor mentee. Mm-hmm. And we would all call knowledge from one another. But it would be probably the Larry Levy's of the world, or people, maybe Randy Gerber, probably not. But people that had taken brands and really blown them up, and very creative, bespoke brands that I would love to, cavort with or gallivant with and extract knowledge from. It's just, the infrastructure, the structure of the infrastructure wasn't really there for that level of engagement, right? And the level of competition, especially in food and beverage, can be irrationally insular, right? Yeah. But only recently, in the last couple of years, I've been reaching out aggressively to people who I really respect, who have achieved in starting and exiting several tech companies, and people have a lot of money in the bank, some not much in the bank. They've just done really well and succeeded with certain things that they've done, and I respect a lot. Or they've failed with a couple things, and they're really intelligent, really good people, and I want to learn from them too. So this is something only in the last year or two I've really kind of let my guard down and said, would you be open to mentoring me? And most of the time they're like, whoa, wasn't expecting this. Have another beer and sure,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I don't think really anyone in this conversation is full of pride, really is the word, but it's very important sometimes to put that aside and understand that you can gain knowledge from everyone, those who've succeeded and those who have failed as well. So, Dave, kind of same question to you. If you had some really instrumental figures in your career that you would consider a mentor, whether you thought so or not at the time?
Yeah, definitely have. One fellow in particular was a partner of mine. And in essence, it ends up being a key part of my strategy in accelerating companies. And it sounds like it's pretty commonsensical, but basically the pitch is to make sure you coordinate the product and your fundraising strategy. So there should be some method to the madness, right? And it's surprising how many companies are just doing things willy-nilly, irrespective of whether they're going to have difficulty getting it funded or not. So I guess right now, religiously, I follow this process to try to tie the whole thing together. So since I work with a lot of software companies, invariably we'll start with kind of mapping out the architecture. Then we'll lay out a roadmap. And then as we start, when I basically assign this to the team to come up with a roadmap, invariably they'll come up with certain things they're going to build first and certain things later. And the question I tend to ask is, why that order, right? And are you building those things in the order of value, right? And they say, what difference does it make? We're building this in the order that's kinds of makes sense from the architecture standpoint. And I guess what happens quite a bit is invariably a lot of companies build the wrong thing first, or in many cases, they'll build the thing that has the most value, maybe pursuant to a series C or D or something in the future, when that's so integral to their secret sauce that invariably as they start going along from the C, the series A, series B, they start going along and they come to a dead stop because there isn't enough value there. And I guess the thinking process, and it's kind of impossible to achieve, but it's basically trying to figure out 5 to 7 years hence, what are you going to do? What are you going to build first? And what do you perceive has the most value? And let's do those first if we can, right? And let's try to create the secret sauce and all those things first. And it's been an integral part of my strategy going forward. And it's just amazing how many companies have no thought process whatsoever about coordinating the product and the fundraising strategy. So it's super important, I believe.
Hey, Dave, isn't it like the passion? Passion can be, you know, getting to the light bulb, getting to the idea, getting to the end. Passion can either be a hammer or it can be your hand to change the light bulb, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. The other thing that occurs quite a bit is certain elements that are being built have large parts of secret sauce and other ones don't. And invariably, there's no consciousness about trying to tie this whole thing together related to value as well, so that, hey, let's build this first. The company ramps in value. We'll be able to do the next round. We'll build the next things later and have the company keep on incrementing in value. And as we all know, invariably, a lot of companies look like this through the fundraising process, right? So it's a shame, basically.
Chris, we need to make I want to go to market with a book full of anecdotes and analogies from Chris Freeman. That'd be a colorful book.
Chris Freeman's book of useless information.
Hey, it's useful to somebody, though.
Sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Ashley, how about yourself? Have you had any incredible individuals throughout your career that you view as a mentor?
Yeah. Not so much early on, but recent years, probably like after I graduated from MBA, so maybe the second half of my career, I have a couple of mentors. So I generally very sufficient in terms of like technical side of things and also skill set building. So I would usually go to my mentor for the mental side of development, because IQ can just go so far, and it's more about your EQ that make you succeed or make you sustain in your career. So I would ask him some questions such as like how I would express disagreement to my manager or top management team so that they don't take it the wrong way. Because sometimes you may have, a lot of people have great ideas, but you may not get accepted by the top management team or your partners because the way how you position it and the way how you communicate with it. And my mentor is especially have that kind of strengths or skill set that complement me a lot. Yeah. So I learned a lot from him in terms of like all this personal development from psychology side of things, and he would brainstorm with me different way of how to express that. And I treat my mentor more like a friend than the strategic advisor kind of thing. So I would never be afraid to tell him anything openly. And I think it would be really helpful just for all the other people. I think if you can be open to your mentor that way, you will be a lot more helpful for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. And obviously, yeah, very, resourceful in your career, and you been able procedurally to figure things out. But sometimes having a sounding board for some of the, how do you deliver a message to somebody that is, a business partner throughout years to come? How do you deliver that message that might be a really challenging one to deliver? And always being open and being receptive for that advice. Those are huge takeaways. I love that. And I'm actually going to kind of shift into just one last, it's a very cliche question, but it's going to have some, I can only imagine, awesome answers. And just, it boils down to some of the advice that you've been given throughout your career. And this might be some crossover with some of our previous questions, but, just pieces of advice, whether they're from peers, from family, from coaches, employers, employees, anything of the sort. Have y'all had any pieces of advice that have really, you think really helped you take that next step in your career and really helped you find happiness and find your passion? And Ashley, I'll go ahead and start that with you, if that's something that you might be able to answer to.
Sure. So the advice that I get from my friends or family and things like that. So the advice I received as a person, how can I find my happiness? There are actually I have a very not very traditional way of finding my happiness. For example, as I mentioned to you early on, I've traveled to almost 140 countries, and I find my happiness through discovering those countries, the culture. For example, Bhutan, I went to. Bhutan is a country in Southeast Asia, and they don't measure by GDP. They measure by GNH, which is Gross National Happiness Index. And the prime minister really care about measuring by happiness as a country. So I went there. I want to explore why people are so happy there. And I want to understand their life philosophy, their values, and how they become who they are right now. So I adopt some of those philosophy in my life. So I come back, I think about how should I just look at my life in general. How can I adopt some of those philosophy? They will have a lot of very sustainable thinking. So they don't cut trees. They always look, everything in Bhutan is like organic. So really care about the sustainability rather than looking into short-term profit, which a lot of businesses are doing right now. So the long-term thinking, the sustainability thinking, and the thing is like, they really care about their people and giving back. Because right now, a lot of the startup founder, they are only want to grow their business and just sell once it gets big. But that's not a sustainability thinking. That's not like solving a problem for the society, making a difference in the world. So I really care about funding the right partners or startup founder who look at their startup in a different angle rather than just the business angle. And that's exactly what I learned from visiting Bhutan. They care about this sustainability thinking to really help the planet. So that's some of the way that I find my own happiness and the advice that I would give to the startup founder as well.
Yeah, wow, I love that. GNH.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into how that's measured, but yeah, it's always important to understand that there's more to it than just the ROI, and I think that's a great answer. Dave, how about yourself? What's some advice that you pass along?
Yeah, I think Chris stole my thunder here, but I'm going to address this question of why you, right? So in essence, this is a question I started noticing from a lot of VCs, and I've turned that into a part of my process and working with the startups. But invariably, and I'm sure all of you have seen this occur, but if you're pitching to some VCs, invariably there's a process involved. You describe the market, you describe how your solution serves that market, you describe how the team is the right one to build it, and then you get into some element of secret sauce or something like that, right? And then so the VCs, invariably there'll be an ask, and we'll say, yes, Mr. and Mrs. VC, we're hoping to raise, $10 million, I'm making this up, $10 million Series A, and we'd like for you to be the lead, blah, blah, blah. And what happens a lot, particularly with a lot of strong VCs, there's a very simple response, and they'll say, okay, you're asking me to be the lead in this $10 million round, and you're a company that's probably going to need 60 to 80, $100 million in total capital, cum capital. So the question they ask is, why you? Why are you the one that's going to be the market leader in this challenging space, despite the fact that it could be very lucrative, right? So I basically turn that around into my clients, and I ask the same kind of question. So basically, the questions I ask them back is, okay, in trying to respond to this, why you? Because I think if startups can basically respond to this well, they'll have a good chance of getting funded, right? So what I ask them to think about is their secret sauce and their key elements that differentiate them from their competitors. And I said for each of those, think about these three questions. So the first one, we could talk about a different way of using AI for blah, 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 blah. And as we all know, people end up describing AI, but they never kind of show what the benefits are. So basically, what I basically ask is, okay, when you talk about each element of secret sauce, I want you to answer three questions, and then I want to see if we can validate those responses. So the three questions are, why can't your solution be emulated? Are we sure somebody can't knock this thing off, right? And there's no short and sweet answer for that. We have to basically come out with some validation to essentially prove that we have a significant leg up on our competitors, and indeed we won't be knocked off. So that's number one. Number two is usually mainly because there'll be a lot of marketing material for what we're building and why it does what it does, blah, blah, blah. But the second question is, are you sure it'll work as advertised? So can you execute and build this thing the way you say you purported that you could? And usually it's explained to us it's very complicated, blah, 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 blah. So it's also a difficult question to answer as well, to prove that there isn't any significant execution risk, right? And the third one, which particularly comes up a lot with AI and ML companies, is, are you sure that it'll work as advertised? If you're saying it's AI and it's going to do something blah, 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 as opposed to saying this is a very cool AI app and you're going to love it, emphasize what it's going to do, and will it result in customers making better business decisions, right? That's what we'd love to see, and then validate that, right? So for each of these three questions or issues, I basically say, okay, now we have to be able to respond with appropriate answer, and then importantly, that's not good enough, because if we're going to get funded, we have to validate that it's correct, right? So for each of these answers, so in these cases, we have to put together some very targeted use cases or prototypes or comparison against benchmarks or something. But what I found is if these startups can really respond to these questions well and say what the key elements are, and if they could validate that they'll work, and we have some external validation, then usually we're well on our way to getting funded. So it's just three simple questions, but they're very difficult to answer and very difficult to get the answers right. So I use those quite a bit.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially the first one, like, is there anything proprietary about it? Even if there isn't, it's important that you make something proprietary about it. Shift the business model just a little bit, shift the product just a little bit, so you can set yourself apart from the competition. I think that's very important.
It's true.
And this is the question I'm excited to ask. Chris, same for you. What's some advice that you've been given and advice that you might pass along as well?
I mean, as a founder myself, right, and I'm inherently an operator, right. When I had my businesses, no matter what it was, I don't want to pay $500 to change a toilet. I'll go change a toilet. Is it the best use of my time? No, but whatever. So from both sides of the lens, expectations are dangerous things, and your life, when you're a founder, if you are the compassion founder and you're mission driven, success driven, there's a lot of sacrifice that's embedded in that, right? And it just by its very nature. And for that reason, your life and your work really there's a lot of gray, right? So advice universally that transcends everything is, expectations are dangerous. They're your expectations typically, unless there's, a market's expectations or investors' expectations. So mind your own expectations for yourself, your staff, and make sure that you can regulate those based on them being your expectations. Grudges are cancer, and in especially as a founder, and especially serial founder, I've been burnt a couple times pretty badly, and it's either I either carry that with me as this huge weight around my ankle, and potentially expire early, or I use it as a pretty big cornerstone of my growth, and I have had to do that. The one thing is, like, not everybody is built to be a founder, and not everybody is built to be the sole founder of a company. So sometimes you actually have to take a part of what you're not good at, or listen to those around you when there's questions coming in that that might have you questioning, not necessarily your thesis or your concept or even the business mission, but how it's getting done. And sometimes you have to parse off something, and it might translate to equity, it might just translate to some money, it might translate to time, or even ego. Like you have to release a part of your ego by doing that as well. I'm just not great at creating a sales team. I was talking to a guy this morning about that. We have this wonderful thing, amazing product. It's blah, blah, AI, well, what's wrong? Well, I can't sell it. Okay, well, that's a problem. So it really is. And this person came to us like, I need help. So that's a good thing. Knowing when to ask for help and how to is another thing, and using your mentor network to find out how to do that without being taken advantage of, abused, or misdirected. I give advice out to any mentee I speak with. I've got a great network. I'm a dog with a bone. If I don't have somebody in my network, I will find that person that can help you if I know what's wrong. That being solutions focused, process focused. And I've had to do this. I've had to go to some of the biggest names in tech and be like, hey, listen, I know so-and-so. Can I ask you a question because I know so-and-so? Great. Would you be willing to talk to so-and-so over here because they need your brain? It's just too big for me. But the thing is, like, you have the right to be happy. And at the end of the day, you should have this mindset of, I just can't believe I'm doing what I'm doing with these people and I'm getting paid for it. Like, that is something that, in our culture now, we've gotten away from a little bit. It's like that happiness thing that I really do appreciate Ashley's comment there. Yeah. And, just because you're working yourself to death, hopefully not, but hopefully if you're working as hard as you possibly could be working, you still have to have balance in your life. And that's not something for the later years, which I used to think when I was 20, working 120 hours a week. Globally, I always say brevity, ironically, brevity, rehearse your presentations, and make sure there's no typos in your presentation. Make sure there's no typos in your presentation. The number of times that it's just embarrassing. Like, one of them was like, they spelled their company's name wrong. I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Oh my God. But when you are presenting, and I had this issue with a mentee recently, first time I met him, and they approached me and they were just, bam, they're running through their thing. And I'm, and it took like maybe 10 of those where I was like, all right, go ahead. And you have to be rehearsed in everyone's a potential customer. Everybody's a potential evangelist of you and your brand, to finding your way to funding or finding your way to, customer base, a new channel, or wisdom. So you have to provide those gaps, as strategic gaps in your presentation.
Oh yeah.
To make sure that, they are punctuation. Pauses are punctuation, right? So making sure, and Greg, we talked about this recently. Anybody at Newchip, man, I'm going to use this window now. Make sure you publicize your brand name a lot.
Say your company name.
Say your company name a lot.
Yes.
Everybody, over the course of 250 companies that are part of every cohort, people are doing other things. So say your company name a lot and always have it on the screen if you can, even if it's part of your presentation. People don't do that. I'm like, what company is this? Who is that? And I have no idea. And then it's on to the next blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. No, that, especially with all, these, and we were one of the first to do it, but it remains super important with virtual showcases and virtual demo weeks. It's so important to, just reinforce your company, reinforce the problem that you're solving, because people are doing other things potentially while they're looking at your pitch. And so
somebody's going to the toilet and the computer's on. You want them to hear your company name.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to, in some of the more in-person settings, you have to read the room. If you are talking for 20 minutes straight, there is a high likelihood that you've been tuned out, that you have, there are questions that have gone unasked. And so, being able to rehearse your presentation, have some pauses, allow other people to contribute is super valuable. Going back to the first thing you said, the self-awareness is huge. I think it's, you need to understand if you need coaching, you need to be self-aware that you don't have it all figured out. And so also very, very important. The time flew by. It's already almost an hour here. And so I am going to take this last 10 seconds to really thank you, each and every one of you, all three of you, for your time. You give lots of your time to Newchip. You give lots of your time outside of Newchip to founders, to entrepreneurs, and every minute of it is super impactful. It really doesn't go unnoticed. We really appreciate that. And obviously, I think all three of you are happy doing it. Ashley, you touched on how you find happiness, and that's so important. And honestly, that's the big reason a lot of people become entrepreneurs. There are some 100-hour weeks on the path to that, but just finding happiness, staying true to your passion. Everything everyone has said has been so impactful. So I really do appreciate your time. And to anyone watching this, if you want to connect with Ashley, Dave, or Chris, please reach out to us. We would love to facilitate that introduction. So I'll go ahead and cut this off here and let everyone go on with their day. Let us all watch some more pitches from our companies, and take care. Everyone have a great day. I appreciate it.